Well, hello there, and welcome to day 72 of A Film a Day with me, Jordan Woodley. Today, looking at the newly released Netflix drama Hillbilly Elegy, based on the J.D. Vance memoirs. So this was flagged, I suppose, because of its Oscar potential. And is in the list of films I wanted to see either before or around the time of the nominations, which I understand will be tomorrow. I won't have achieved that. There are still several films left that are definitely get a nomination of some kind that I still need to catch up on. But I like to try and get that head start, and this one early on did get that mention. And I can see why, because this is based on a memoir. It has a real sense of Americana to it. It's about working class struggle. It's about the difficult relationship between that a child has with a parent with a substance problem, and about the sort of changing nature of America from its working class roots through to its high achieving generational development, and you can see the subtext there and the different layers of narrative that it's trying to deal with. It's unfortunate, I suppose, because of all weeks, this is the week that I decided to also watch the Netflix TV series Ginny and Georgia. Sorry, I'm trying to get that in the right order. Ginny and Georgia, which very much covers the same themes. The idea of someone coming from an impoverished background and their struggles, the relationship between a single parent and a child, and the flip flop between who is doing the parenting, the representation of small town America, the issues of identity and class. But I felt like this series did it significantly better than this film. Don't get me wrong, I still think this film has several merits to it. I think it's beautifully shot. There is something about the setting and the way the camera looks at the real heart of kind of Ohio. Well, it initially starts in Kentucky and then moves to Ohio, and both of them are portrayed beautifully as these heartland type areas that just have such an earthy, colourful look to them, and I think that's really well represented in the cinematography. And I think, as I mentioned, Amy Adams and Glenn Close both do very powerful performances. Amy Adams is someone who, as I mentioned, is struggling with substance abuse, and the different faces of what that looks like at different points, and covering things like psychosis and the breakdown of someone who is struggling with both of these things at different stages of her life. So I do think that she gives a really powerful performance. Similarly, Glenn Close, who I previously mentioned in The Wife, gives a real sense of matriarch and that real aged observer role, and I do think that she again gives this earthy performance, I suppose. It really fits in with the landscape around her. She really represents the ideas of people of that class and feeling and just the desperation and the hard work that someone has to do to live a life like she does. Gabriel Vasso, who plays the older version of J.D. Vance, that's the one who, because the film follows two narratives, you have 2011, which is him at finishing at law school and trying to secure an internship and struggling with that, whilst also struggling with his mother and her substance problems. And then it flashes back to a younger version around 1997 and slowly rolls forward. I think Gabriel Vasso is good for what he needs to do. He he does represent well the face of someone who is struggling under the weight of family and work, and his whole life is just sort of on the knife's edge, and he does portray that well, but there is something a little... There's nothing particularly remarkable about his performance. I think it's good, but it's not phenomenal. He isn't the standout. He simply does a good performance amongst Amy Adams and Glenn Close, who are great performers. Frankly, as an extension to that, the younger version of the same character probably gives more of a ranged performance and more colour and flavour, and you could say that that's a representation of someone who is older and able to keep their emotions in check and internalise, which is what it feels like Gabriel Vasso's doing, is internalising a lot of his performance, whereas the younger actor very much wears and expresses everything somewhat melodramatically, but it because it shows more, it just comes across better. It comes across more fitting with the film. I think that's where the problem lies with this film, is the fact that it veers between wanting to have this very serious look at things like substance abuse and family struggle and the working class struggle with periods of melodrama, and where it goes a little too far and a little bit too explosive, and the characters do fall into these caricatures that I just don't think fit the realist portrayal that sometimes it thinks it wants to have. So on the one hand, for instance, the dinner scene where J.D. Vance is trying to fit in amongst these wealthy and influential law partners, and there's something about one or two of these actors who are playing around him who play a bit caricature rich man, and that really stands out as and so the function of it is to then draw contrast with his humble working class background, but it just makes them look like caricatures and him stand out in a way that he probably wouldn't in a realistic context, and makes the scene look a little bit melodramatic, as I say, a bit TV movie. It reminds me somewhat of the Ruth Bader Ginsburg film I saw last year, where as much as I was interested in the subject matter, it would fall back on the slightly cack-handed methods to try and tell the story that were very simplistic. And then contrastly, when he's back in Ohio, you get a lot of working class, quote unquote, redneck stereotypes, and again, as much as that's trying to portray the difficulty of that kind of, there are people who are just your standard working class people, and they are represented well, but then you have the more archetypal redneck hick drug taking kind of character, and they are more of a stereotype, and I just feel like the characters are so broad in certain sections that it just, I don't know, it like I say, it slips into melodrama. I also think the narrative jumps a lot. It's constantly flipping back between 1997, 2011. It will then jump to a period a little later than 97, you know, and then it will jump backwards to younger versions of characters. And I don't know, that doesn't... it's not that I found it confusing, I just wasn't connecting to it because it would jump backwards and forwards, and it sort of struggled with the focus. And so, broadly speaking, I think when it comes to the Oscar conversation of this, I do think Amy Adams and Glenn Close give performances that are powerful enough that they rightly probably will get recognition, but I think it's in a film, they are greater performers in a lesser film. The film is fine for the most part, but it's not particularly interesting, and I just think their performances shine out within it. Comparably, I was talking a lot about Three Billboards and how I think Three Billboards, if rather than Ginny and Georgia, which isn't a perfect parallel, it's just simply the serendipity of watching it at the same time as I was watching this. In terms of cinema, I think Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri is a better representation of this kind of narrative, and it's much more focused, and it's just a stronger piece of drama and film. Or similarly, a film from a few years ago called Grandma, again, represents this kind of narrative just better, with more focus, and I think this tries, but it just isn't quite. It lacks something, a few things that just diminish it. Anyway, as I say, not a bad film, just not an example of excellence. So, before I go to the social media plugs, tomorrow I am doing another live stream. This time my first YouTube live stream, as opposed to my Facebook live that I did a few weeks ago, or a week or so ago. Where I'll be talking about the David Fincher film Zodiac. So I've already shared the link, so if you go through to my channel, you should find the stream, and if you go to my social media, you'll also find links to the stream as well. Speaking of, if you could, follow me on Twitter at Jordan_Woodley. If you could also like this video, subscribe to the channel and press that little bell to get notifications, because then you will know when I do a live stream or when I upload a new video. And if you could go through my back catalogue of films, and if you could share this as well, that would be wonderful for me. Thank you for joining me. Take care.